Hello and welcome to The Understudy, the channel that teaches you everything about musical theater. My name is Philippa and today I will read from Broadway Musicals, The 101 Greatest Shows of All Time by Ken Bloom and Frank Blasnick. To get the full version of the book, I recommend getting the physical copy as no images from the book will be displayed here. I do not own this material, I'm just reading from a place of entertainment and education. And I will not edit these audio recordings as I go, so you will get the unabridged version of my reading. Broadway's leading ladies remember. Angela Lansbury. I've enjoyed a long career in movies and television, as well as on Broadway, but I've always considered the time I have spent singing, dancing, and acting before a live audience to be the most rewarding of my career. I've had my ups and downs in theater, but I think every experience was worthwhile. After all, I got to work with such wonderful talents as Stephen Sondheim on The Grand Guignol, crowd pleaser Sweeney Todd, and the definitely out there flop Anyone Can Whistle, and with Jerry Herman on the immensely satisfying Mame and the expectation-stretching Dear World. Joan Plowright and I co-starred in the drama A Taste of Honey, and I slammed doors with the brilliant Fasor Bert Lore in Hotel Paradiso. That one was my Broadway debut. I've got to admit, it's been a varied career and an immensely satisfying one. The greatest satisfaction coming from my collaboration with so many gifted artists and technicians, and especially the audience. Chita Rivera. Broadway is my family. It has trained me, led me, cared for me, and shaped my life. The theater introduced me to many gifted friends and teachers. The feelings of community with an audience and the telling beautiful stories through song, dance, and speech. It has even congratulated me in return. I am rich with my memories of the genius Dick Van Dyke singing and dancing his way into my heart, and of dancing beside the brilliant Gwen Verdon. How can I ever forget Gower Champion sending Dick and me both home from Bye Bye Birdie rehearsal because we couldn't stop laughing, or the out-of-town finale Chicago, in which Gwen played the saxophone and I a fabulous drum set. That was cut because Bob Fosse couldn't get us out of the scene and into the hot honey rag smoothly. To have witnessed the sheer brilliance of the Cha-Cha and West Side Story being created on the spot by Jerome Robbins, or to have heard Fred Ebb and John Kander perform their scores for Chicago, The Rink, and The Kiss of Spider-Woman for the first time, I am so lucky to have been there. The theater is a truly beautiful place. Florence Henderson. Broadway, how I love it. It was always my dream to walk the boards, and I made it there at 18. In a show called Wish You Were Here, with music and lyrics by Harold Rome, directed by Josh Logan. I had a small part as the new girl at camp. I would sashay across the stage behind a camp counselor. This musical was in the show. This musical was about a Jewish camp in the Catskills. How this blonde, blue-eyed Shishka wound up in the show, I don't know, but I was thrilled. And say, "Can I see the game?" Shakespeare would have loved the way I said that line, and I will never forget it. I also got to sing the chorus and saw my first TV appearance was singing off camera on the Ed Sullivan Show. After a couple of months, I went to an open call for Rodgers and Hammerstein, and I got the lead in The Last National Company of Oklahoma. Barbara Cook and Ado Annie, and we got to do the show in the New York City Center for a few weeks before we went on tour. While out of town, I got called to audition for a show called Fanny, again directed by the great Josh Logan, starring Ezio Pinza and Walter Zlizek. I landed the title role and was in the show for almost 2 years, during which I was pinched often by Ezio and upstaged often by Walter, but I love them both very much. The picture is of me and Lloyd Reese, who played my son. He was a New York boy, and puberty struck very early. It wasn't long until he looked like my boyfriend. He was replaced by Gary Wright, who went on to become a successful musician. I could go on about Noel Coward, Joe Layton, and all the other great legends I was privileged to work with. But that's another book. Broadway will always be my first love. Donna McKechnie. This picture brings back so many fond memories. The dancer next to me is Tracy Everett. We were chorus dancers in our first Broadway show, the Pulitzer Prize-winning How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. In this shot, we are performing in a number called A Secretary is Not a Toy. The office politics in the 1960s are captured brilliantly in the character of this photo. Not so politically correct by today's standards, true, but disarmingly choreographed by Bob Fosse to the witty music and lyrics of Frank Loesser. Notice the wonderful costumes by Robert Fletcher and the sets by Robert Randolph. Gwen Verdon was acting as her dance captain on the show, acting Fosse during rehearsals, even though by this time she was already a great Broadway star. This was a job she loved doing for Jack Cole as well. It was Gwen who opened the door for Tracy and me to appear on Talent Scouts, on which we performed a duet choreographed by the great Paul Draper. Jim Backus was the host that week. The 2 years I spent in How to Succeed enabled me to have a life in New York City, acting and taking voice lessons, making good friends in the community, and achieving my dream of devoting myself to life in musical theater. It was a sweet and happy time. Leslie Uggams. Music has always been the thread of my life. From the time I was 15 years old and tapped to be a regular on Sing Along with Mitch, it's been a constant that has inspired me. And what better place to sing great music than on a Broadway stage? I made my Broadway debut in Hallelujah Baby, a show that was originally written for Lerna Horn. It featured a score by the legendary Jules Stein and lyrics by Betty Comden and Adolph Green, so I was in great hands. It made me a Broadway star and sent me on a wonderful journey through television, film, nightclubs, and back to Broadway, where I have gotten not only the chance to perform the fabulous songs of Jerry Herman, as in this picture in Jury Girls, where I am dressed in the gorgeous flossy cloth gown, sitting on a grand piano and singing If He Walked Into My Life, one of the greatest torch songs ever written. But also the drama of August Wilson, one of the greatest playwrights of the 20th century. I have been privileged to sing the songs of genius composers of our age, George Gershwin, Cole Porter, and Harold Arlen. I last returned to the world of Broadway musicals as Muzzy in Thoroughly Modern Millie, and I've just finished the out-of-town tryout of a biographical musical where I get to play my idol, Lena Horne. That truly brings my theater career full circle. I can't wait to see what Broadway has in store for me next. Sandy Duncan. Peter Pan is one of the most enduring roles in the theater for a woman. Since 1904, whether it was taking the form of a play, a pantomime, or a musical, Peter Pan has never failed to touch the hearts and minds of children from 3 to 93. I have worked professionally in the theater for 50 years, and while I have had many thrilling experiences, there are 4 electrifying moments in Peter Pan that cannot be matched. There is Peter's startling and magical entrance, where the Darling family's nursery windows fly open and he bursts onto the stage. There is the free flight at the end of Act 1, where Peter sails across the stage, disappearing and re-emerging from the wings as he leads Wendy, Michael, and John to Neverland. There is the tearful, frightened response from the audience, followed by the thunderous applause that saves bereaved Tinkerbell and resolves in cheering and joy. And finally, at the curtain call, there is Peter, gravity-defying flight to the highest point of the balcony, fulfilling the dreams of every child, young or old. It has come as a bittersweet understanding for me as an actress to know there will, in all likelihood, be no theatrical experience to rival those chill bump moments. I feel, as must every actress who has gone before me, an enormous sense of gratitude to James M. Barrie, to Jules Stein, to Carolyn Lee, Betty Comden, and Adolph Green for allowing me into the world of Peter Pan. Foreword by Jerry Orbach. Turning the pages of this book brings back a lot of memories of my 45 years in musical theater. It seems I had just arrived in New York when I found myself, at the age 20, on a stage at the Theatre Dillis in Greenwich Village, acting in the historic revival of Kurt Weill and Bertolt Brecht's The Threepenny Opera. I remember my co-stars, Bea Arthur, Ed Asner, Charlotte Bray, and John Austen. But most of all, I remember how much in awe I was of Lenia, who not only Kurt Weill's widow, but one of the greatest actresses of all time. I celebrated my 21st birthday while in that show, singing Mac the Knife. My next show turned out to be the longest-running musical in theater history, The Fantastics, in which I introduced my first standard, Try to Remember. My Broadway debut was in David Merrick's production of Carnival, directed by the genius Gower Champion alongside Anna Maria Albergetti and Kay Ballard. I played Charlie Davenport with the legendary Ethel Merman in the historic revival of Annie Get Your Gun. I guess I was naive, but for a while I thought that every show that came in my way would be a hit. Then I made my straight play debut in The Natural Look, and our opening night was also our closing night. Most memories come flooding back. Promises with its brand new sound by Burt Bacharach and Hal David. It's a great book by Neil Simon and its wonderful director Robert Moore. Chicago, starring two of the great ladies of theater, Gwen Verdon and Cheetah Rivera. And my most recent Broadway show, the remarkable 42nd Street, my third show for David Merrick. Believe me, I know I was a very fortunate man. Just how fortunate is illustrated on the pages of this book. For all of my original musicals, save 42nd Street, are represented in this celebration of the greatest shows of all time. It's a thrill for me to relive those terrific experiences and see all of the magnificent people with whom I was privileged to work with. Please enjoy this rich volume, every page covered with photographs, most of them never before published, and many of them so rare that I'd never seen some of the ones of me. Expert commentary by two authors whose breadth of knowledge is downright scary, and information not found in any other place that I know of. Reading it makes me proud to be in a line that stretches over an entire century and into the next. And when you're done, put the book down and go to the theater. Broadway history is being made 8 times a week, and we can only guess what the 101 greatest musicals of the 21st century will be. Introduction. Welcome to the world of musical theater. Well, our look at that world, anyway. Our primary goal in writing this book was to examine the 100-year-plus history of the Broadway musical in all its glorious variety. We had no intention of creating a definitive history, though many of the great shows, more than the 101 featured ones, and the hundreds of significant artists are covered in one way or another throughout these pages. We'd like to think of this book as a celebration of countless wonderful performers, directors, songwriters, librettists, designers, and producers who have enriched this truly American art form. In this paperback edition, you'll notice many changes from the original hardcover, input from hundreds of readers, plus the additional artistic perspective that has come with the passage of time since that first publication, have led us to reconsider our list of the 101 greatest. Some shows have been added, causing others, inevitably, to drop off. In addition, we've expanded many of the special chapters and added many photos for which we didn't have space for the first time around. The Broadway musical is evolving even as we write this, and we wanted our book to evolve as well. We'd like to reiterate that we have termed these shows the greatest rather than the best for a reason. Not all of the musicals included here, not even all of the new ones, would appear on our best list. But each has been selected because it was extremely popular and or groundbreaking in some way, and has had an undeniable influence on the form. Of course, some of them really are the best in Broadway history, and we haven't been shy about saying so. We haven't included any musicals whose score were first created for another project, So 42nd Street, The Lion King, Crazy for You, Ain't Misbehaving, and others remain ineligible. Any undertaking of this magnitude can only be possible with the help of a number of dedicated friends and colleagues. In addition to those who helped us on the original book, we especially want to thank the divas who generously shared their memories of life upon the sometimes wicked stage. We also like to thank our editor, Laura Ross, as well as our designers, Scott Citron and Luan Graffio. Our friends at PhotoFest have supplied us with yet more remarkable images. Thanks to photographers John Marcus, Carol Rosseg, and Martha Swope for additional photos. We truly hope you enjoy revisiting your favorite shows, becoming acquainted with new ones, and reading about performers, songs, stories, and stars that make the world of the American musical so wonderful and enduring. Ken Bloom and Frank Vlasnik. That was the first part of the book Broadway Musicals, the 100 Great Shows of All Time. And stay tuned for the rest of the book.